In this video, we are going to build this absolutely stunning background remover website using React and Tailwind. If you're looking for a cool and beginner-friendly project to add your portfolio, this video is for you. The best part is we will get this done in under 200 lines of code. And to make things even easier, I will provide you a starter code so you can jump right in and start to code along with me. I will walk you through every single line of code step by step, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to create your own background remover website in the most simplest way possible. So let's get into it. Before we start, let's take a look at the starter code. You can find the link in the description and download this project. This is a React project created using Vite, and it already has Tailwind inside. Here we have the app.jsx file with a cool gradient and this h1 with a text inside. Inside the index.html, I've changed the title, and other than Tailwind, we just have one other package, which is Imagely background removal. To be able to remove the backgrounds from images, we are going to use this library, and this is all we are going to need. We are not going to install any additional packages. After you download the project, run npm run dev to open the project on your browser, and it should look like this. So now we can start to build the project. Let's start with the imports. We are going to create a couple of state variables, and for that we're going to use useState, and we're going to create a reference to a input on the UI. So for that we are going to use useRef, and there is one final import, which is remove background from this library. This is a function from the Imagely library. We are going to use this function to remove the backgrounds from images, and these are all the imports. Now inside the function, let's create all the state variables that we are going to need. First, we're going to create one named original image, and its setter function set original image. The initial state is going to be null. Inside this state variable, we are going to store the original image that is going to be provided by the user. Then we're going to create another one named processed image, and the setter function set processed image. This one also going to have a initial state of null. We're going to use this one to store the image after the background removal process. The next one is processing. This will have a initial state of false. We are going to use this to display a loading state on the UI when there is a background removal process going on. We are simply going to show a loading spinner, and we're going to create another state variable for errors. So if there is any error, we are going to store it inside this variable and display it on the UI. Next, we are going to create a reference to an element on the UI, which is going to be file input. So let's name this file input ref, and using useRef, we are going to set it to null because we haven't created the input that we are going to reference yet. The way this app is going to work is we're going to have a input section that you can drag and drop images inside, and that input section will be hidden, and we are going to hide it using this reference. And these are all the state variables and references that we are going to need. Next, we can start to create the functions that we are going to need. The first function will be named handle file select. This is going to be an async function because this function will be responsible for storing the original image that user uploads, and it's also going to be responsible for removing the background. So because this is going to take time, this is going to be an async function. It's going to take the uploaded image as the file. First, we're going to create a base case if there is no file, and if the file type is not a image, then we are going to set a error that says please select a valid image file, and we are going to exit the function because this means there is no image to be processed. And if there is an image uploaded successfully, we can get rid of the error. So let's set it back to null and also reset the processed image. We are doing this to get rid of the previous information. So if there is a already processed image, we need to reset it before we start another process. Next, we're going to create a variable named reader, and we are going to use this function called file reader. So this file reader is basically going to read the image that you are going to upload. We are doing this to be able to preview the image on the UI, and to be able to preview it, we basically need to tell the browser that how it's going to read this image, and the way it's going to read it is basically turning it into a string, and this is what the file reader does. So if the file is successfully read, we can trigger a unload that takes the event. First, we need to create another base case like this one to check if there's a image, and after the file reader reads the image, the type of this variable, the type should be a string. So we are going to check if we have a string. If we have successfully read the image and get a string from it, that means we are ready to preview the image on the UI. So we can set the original image to that string. We also need to create a temporary URL. So let's use read as data URL and pass the file. Next, we are going to have this try and catch block. We are going to catch errors inside, and inside the finally block, we are going to set is processing to false, because that means the processing is over. Inside the error section, we're going to set a error. If the process fails, then we're going to display this text, and we're also going to show a console error that says background removal error, and we're going to display the error. Now inside the try block, we are going to start the background removal process. We're going to create a blob. We are going to wait for the remove background function to process the image, and after the image is processed, just like we did here, to be able to display the processed image on the UI, we're going to create a temporary URL using URL that create object URL, and we're going to pass the blob. And just like we did with the set original image, this time we are going to pass the URL inside the set processed image, and this function is done. Let's go over this one more time in case if it's confusing. We created this function so that it is going to run whenever we select a file, and it's an async function because inside we are doing background removal and we don't know how long it takes. That's the reason why we used await keyword before we call the remove background function. First, we check if there is a file selected and if it's a image. Otherwise, we show a error and exit the function. If everything is fine, we basically reset the state variables in case if there are any previous information inside. Then we create a file reader so that we can read the image. Once the image is loaded and if it's successfully read, we check if we have a string back, and if we have this string, we save it inside the set original image so we can show a preview of that image. And here, this is where we actually read the file and convert it into a URL. Here inside this try and catch block, we basically send the image to the remove background function, and this will give us back a processed image. Then we create a temporary URL and we save it inside this state. If there are any errors, we display a error, and when the process finishes, we set is processing back to false. Next, you're going to create a couple of really simple functions. One function for handle drag over, it is going to take the event, and we are going to prevent the default behavior of the browser. We use prevent default because normally if you drag and drop a file inside a browser, by default it tries to open that file. In our case, we don't want the browser to open the file. We want the users to be able to drag and drop the file inside the website. Next, we're going to create another function named handle drop, and again we're going to use prevent default for the same reason. We want the users to be able to drop the file inside and prevent the browser from trying to open that image. Next, we need to get the image user uploads and pass it to this function. So let's create a variable named file. Let's get the file and pass it to the handle file select function. Let's create the next function named handle file input change. Let's say there is a image uploaded and processed already, and you want to upload a new image. We basically need to swap the old image with the new one, and we can do that by using the file variable. First, we will check if there is a file, and if there is a file, and because this will be an array, the first item will be 0, and if there is nothing in the first place, then we're going to set it to undefined. And then we will pass the newly uploaded image to the handle file select function to be processed. Next, we're going to create the function named download image. First, we need to check if there is a processed image Otherwise, we exit the function. To be able to download the processed image, we're going to create a link and we're going to create a anchor tag on the UI using create element, and we will pass a. Then we will attach a href to it, and it will be the processed image. We need to define a name for the image. Let's say background removed.png. When you call this function, it is going to automatically click on the link and download the image. To be able to start the download, we need to create a temporary URL again. So URL revoke object, and we will pass the processed image. There is one function left, which is reset app. Inside this function, we are going to reset the original image back to null. Reset set processed image back to null as well. When you reset the app, we are not processing anymore, so we can set is processing to false. We also gonna get rid of all the error messages, and we are going to clean the input section. So file input ref. If there is a current image inside, you're gonna set its value back to a empty string. And this is it with the functionality. Now we can start to create the UI. Let's start by creating the main cart section, which is going to display the before and after processing the image. Create a div and set its width to 100%, set its maximum width to 2x large, create a background gradient to right from this purplish color to indigo 950. Gonna create a little glass effect using backdrop blur with a border with 30% opacity. Gonna give it rounded corners, padding 4, and after this small breakpoint, padding is going to be 6. Let's also create a drop shadow using shadow 2x large. Now inside this div, I'm gonna open a set of curly braces. If there is no image uploaded yet, then we are going to display another div inside this condition. Let's make it a flex container with the direction of column, center the items, set a height 96, margin bottom, padding 4, and a background gradient to bottom from indigo to fuchsia. Let's give it rounded corners. We're gonna lower down the opacity to 80, and on hover, gonna raise it to 100%. Also, we're gonna create a shadow with the fuchsia color. On hover, gonna make this shadow a lot bigger, and let's create a transition with duration 400 for the hover effects. Center the text and cursor pointer. So this div is basically going to act as a input section. You will be able to drag and drop images inside. To be able to make this act as a input, we need to create a real input inside. The type is going to be file, and we are going to use the ref that we have created, file input ref, to reference this input. Let's make this accept only images, and using onChange event handler, we are going to pass the handle file input change function. And finally, this will be hidden. Now inside this div, on click, we are going to create an anonymous function that is going to trigger this ref on click. And let's enable the drag over, and on drop, inside the drag over, we are going to pass the handle drag over function that we have created and handle drop function. Let's create a div with this photo emoji inside. Make it a lot bigger, and after this small breakpoint, it is going to be a lot bigger. Margin bottom 4 with another div. Inside this div, you're going to display this text. Drag and drop or click to upload an image. Let's make the text large. After this small breakpoint, it is going to be extra large, and make this text with the color fuchsia 200. Margin bottom 2. Under this, we're going to have another div with this text. Let's make it extra small, and after the small breakpoint, it is going to be small. Set the text to fuchsia 400. And with this done, we basically have the drag and drop section. Now this section will act as a input, and you don't see any input sections because it's set to hidden. Instead of this entire div acts like a input section, which allows you to drag over files and drop them. Right under this curly brace, I'm gonna open another one. If there is an error, we are going to display this div with text centered and text pink 400 with margin bottom 4. Inside the curly braces, we are going to pass the error. Let's open another set of curly braces. This time, if there is a original image uploaded, then we are going to display this div. I'm going to turn this into a grid container with grid columns 1. After the median breakpoint, I'm going to have 2 columns with a gap of 6 and margin bottom 6. Let's create another div. This time, this one is going to be flex container with the flex direction of column. Center the items. Inside, you're going to have this div that says original. Let's set it to fuchsia 300. Make it large. Margin bottom 2. Right under this div, you're going to create another one. You're going to use this div to display the uploaded image before processing. You're going to set a aspect ratio of square, width 100% and maximum width medium, margin on the left and right auto with a 2 pixel border, rounded corners, and we are going to hide the overflow. Let's make it a flex container and center the image in the middle. Now inside, create a image tag, and as the source of the image, you're going to get the original image from the original image state variable. Let's pass a alt text that says original. To make this image cover the entire parent div, I'm gonna say object contain width full and height full. This is how the uploaded image looks like. Now inside this grid container, you're gonna create another div. This one is going to display the image after the processing. You're gonna create this same container. So let's copy and paste this. Let's also copy and paste this text and say change the text to background removed. And again, you're going to create this same container right under this div. And inside, you're going to open a set of curly braces. If the image is processed, then we are going to display the processed image using the image tag. We can copy and paste this again, change the source to processed image, change the alt text. And if the image is still being processed, we are going to display this div, make it a flex container with flex direction of column, center the elements inside, set width to 100% and height to 100%. And inside, if there is still processing going on, then we're going to display a text that says processing. And we are going to display a loading spinner on top of this text. So let's make this a flex container again and center the items horizontally. To create a spinner, I'm gonna create a div and we will use the animate spin from Tailwind. Give it a width and height, 2 pixel of border. Make the board fuchsia 300 and border top with a lighter fuchsia and make it a circle. And if there is no processing going on, by default, we're going to have this span that says processed image will appear here. There is a little typo. Let's get rid of one of these parentheses. And finally, outside these parentheses, we are going to create the buttons. So if there is a original image uploaded, then we are going to show the buttons in a flex container, flex direction column. After this small breakpoint, it is going to be row, flex wrap, gap 3, and center the items with a margin top of 2. The first button is going to be responsible for downloading the image. So if there is a processed image, then it is going to say download result. If there is still processing, it is going to say processing. And when you click on this button, we are going to call the download image function, and the button is going to be disabled when there is no processed image. Let's give it a padding on the left and right, padding on the top and bottom, and a background gradient to right from fuchsia 600 to pink 400. On hover, we are going to lower down the opacity to 80, text white, font semi-bold, and rounded corners. When the button is disabled, you're going to set its opacity to 50. And we are not going to allow to be clicked on, so cursor not allowed, and cursor pointer. And right under this button, gonna create the reset button that says process another image. On click, it is going to call the reset app function. It is pretty much going to be the same we can copy and paste the styling. It is not going to be disabled, so we can get rid of this class and also this one. Let's upload a image and see how it looks like. There you go. I have uploaded a image and it's automatically being processed as soon as I upload it. And there you go. You can see the processed image, the background is removed, and when I click on download result, it downloads the image. If I click on process another image, it goes back to the input section. So this is how we can create a background removal app using React and Tailwind. I hope you guys find it helpful and enjoyed it. Thank you for your time and see you in the next video.